All right. So, look here, man. A lot has been said as of recently of Edward Bernays propaganda, right? Actually, I'm gonna probably the only one talking about it, to be real with you, right? But I think it's important that everybody kind of understand how to spot propaganda when it fucking starts, right? And this book here legitimately will give you the glasses of Roddy Piper in They Live, right? It'll allow you to just immediately spot exactly what's going on and what's being told to you without really having, you know what I'm saying, to go outside of your square and figure shit out. And I think that's important in dangerous times such as these. So this is my second installment in this. This is chapter 3, The New Propagandists. This is Edward Bernays' propaganda from 1928. This is the dude who has done a lot of things. Go back to my first video and I'll explain more. And you should probably listen to this the whole way through. It's really, really fucking important. All right. So chapter 3, The New Propagandists. Who are the men who, without realizing it, give us our ideas, tell us whom to admire and whom to despise, who to believe about the ownership of public utilities, about the tariff, about the price of rubber, about the Dawes Plan, about immigration, who tell us how our houses should be designed, what furniture we should put into them, what menus we should serve on our table, right? What kind of shirts we must wear, what sports we must indulge in, what plays we should see, what charities we should support, what pictures we should admire, what slang we should affect, what jokes we should laugh at. If we set out to make a list of men and women who, because of their position in public life, might fairly be called the molders of public opinion, we could quickly arrive at an extended list, right, of persons mentioned in the who's who. It would obviously include the President of the United States, the members of his cabinet, the senators, the representatives in Congress, the governors of our 48 states. At that point, there was only 48. The presidents of the chambers of commerce in our 100 largest cities, the chairman of the boards of the directors of our 100 or more largest cities, right? The chairman of our more largest industrial corporations, the president of many of the labor unions affiliated in the American Federation of Labor, the national president of each of the national professional and fraternal organizations, the presidents of each of the racial or language societies in the country, the 100 leading newspaper and magazine editors, the 50 most popular authors, the presidents of the 50 leading charitable organizations, the 20 leading theatrical or cinema producers, the 100 recognized leaders of fashion, the most popular and influential clergymen in the 100 leading cities, the presidents of our colleges and universities, and the foremost members of their faculty, the most powerful financiers in Wall Street, the most noted, the most noted amateurs of sport, and so on. With such a list would comprise several thousand persons. But it is well known that many of these leaders are themselves led, sometimes by persons whose names are known to a few. Many congressmen, in framing his platforms, followed the suggestions of a district boss from whom few persons outside of the political machine have ever heard of. Eloquent divines may have great influence in their communities, but often take their doctrines from a higher ecclesiastical authority. The presidents of chambers of commerce mold to the thought of local businesses, men concerning public issues, but the opinions which they promulgate are usually derived from some national authority. A presidential candidate may be drafted in response to overwhelming popular demand, but it's well known that his name may be decided upon by half a dozen men sitting around a table in a hotel room. In some instances, the power of invisible wire pullers is flagrant. The power of these invisible cabinet which delivered at the poker table in a certain little greenhouse in the White House in Washington has become a national legend. There is a period in which the major policies of the national government were dictated by a single man, Mark Hanna. A Simmons May, for a few years, succeeded in marshaling millions of men on a platform of intolerance and violence. Such persons typify the public mind of the type of ruler associated with the phrase invisible government, but we do not often stop to think that there are dictators in other fields whose influence is just as decisive of that of the politicians I have mentioned. And Irene Castle can establish the fashion of short hair, which dominates 9/10 of the women who make any pretense to being fashionable. Paris fashion leaders set the mode of the short skirt, for wearing which 20 years ago any woman would simply have been arrested and thrown into jail by the New York police. And the entire women's clothing industry, capitalized at hundreds of millions of dollars, must be reorganized to conform to the dictum. Now, nor, what is still more important, the extent to which our thoughts and habits are modified by authorities. In some departments of our daily life in which we are imagine ourselves free agents, we are ruled by dictators exercising great power. A man buying a suit of clothes imagines that he is choosing according to his taste and his personality the kind of garment which he prefers. In reality, he may be obeying the orders of an anonymous gentleman tailor in London. This personage is a silent partner in Nama's tailoring establishment, which is patronized by gentlemen of fashion and princes of blood. He suggests to British noblemen and others a blue cloth instead of a gray, 2 buttons instead of 3, or sleeves a quarter of an inch narrower than last season. The distinguished customer approves of the idea. But how does this fact affect John Smith at Topeka? The gentleman tailor is under contract with a certain large American firm which manufactures men's suits to send them instantly the designs of the suits chosen by the leaders of London fashion. Upon receiving the designs with specification as to color, weight, and texture, the firm immediately places an order with the cloth makers for several $100,000 worth of cloth. The suits made up according to the specifications are advertised as the latest fashion. The fashionable men in New York, Chicago, Boston, and Philadelphia wear them, and the Topeka man, recognizing this leadership, does the same. Women are just as subject to the commands of invisible government as are men. A silk manufacturer seeking a new market for his product suggested to a large manufacturer of shoes that women's shoes should be covered with silk to match their dresses. The idea was adopted and systematically propagandized. A popular actress was persuaded to wear the shoes. The fashion spread, and the shoe firm was ready with the supply to meet the created demand. And the silk company was ready with the silk for more shoes. The man who injected this idea into the shoe industry was ruling women in one department of their social lives. Different men rule us in the various... Hang on a minute. There we go. In the various departments of our lives. There may be one power behind the throne in politics, another in the manipulation of the federal discount rate, and still another in the direction of next season's dances. If there were a national invisible cabinet ruling our destinies, a thing which is not impossible to conceive of, it would work through a certain group of leaders on Tuesday for one purpose, and through an entirely different set on Wednesday for another. The idea of an invisible government is relative. There may be a handful of men who control the educational methods of the great majority of our schools. Yet from another standpoint, every parent is a group leader with authority over his or her children. The invisible government tends to be concentrated in the hands of the few because of the expense of manipulating the social machinery which controls the opinions and habits of the masses. To advertise on a scale which will reach 50 million persons is expensive. To reach and persuade the group leaders who dictate the public's thoughts and actions is likewise expensive. For this reason, there is an increasing tendency to concentrate the functions of the propaganda in the hands of the propaganda specialist. This specialist is more and more assuming a distinct place and function in their national life. New activities call for new nomenclature. The propagandist who specializes in interpreting enterprises and ideas to the public and in interpreting the public to promulgators of the new enterprises and ideas has come to be known by the name of a public relations council. The new profession of public relations has grown up because of the increasing complexity of modern life and the subsequent necessity for making I'm sorry, my friends, right? Making the actions of one part of the public understandable to other sectors of the public. It is due to the increasing dependence of organized power on all sorts upon public opinion. Governments, whether they are monarchical or constitutional, democratic or communist, depend on acquiescence in public opinion for the success of their efforts. And in fact, government is only government by virtue of the public acquiescence. In other words, right, those who rule all right, rule because of the will of those being ruled. That's kind of important to understand. All right, legit. Right. So industries, public utilities, educational movements, indeed all groups representing any concept or product, whether they are the majority or the minority, indeed to succeed only because of approving public opinion. Public opinion is the unacknowledged partner in all broad efforts. The Public Relations Council then is the agent who is working with modern media of communication, the group of formations of society, brings an idea to the consciousness of the public. But he is a great deal more than that. He is concerned with the courses of action, doctrines, systems, and opinions, and the securing of public support for them. He is also concerned with tangible things, such as manufactured and raw products. He is concerned with public utilities, with large trade groups and associations representing the entire industries. He functions primarily as an advisor to his client, very much as a lawyer does. A lawyer concentrates on the legal aspects of his client's business. A counsel on public relations concentrates on the public's contracts as his client's business. Every phase of the client's ideas, products, or activities which may affect the public or in which the public may have an interest is in parts his function. For instance, in the specific problems of the manufacturer, he examines the product, the markets, the way in which the public reacts to the products, the attitude of the employees to the product, to the public, and towards the product, and the cooperation of the distribution agencies. The Council on Public Relations, after he examined all these and all other factors and endeavors to shape the actions of his clients, so that they will gain the interest, the approval, and the acceptance of the public. The means by which the public is apprised and the actions of his client are as varied as the means of communications themselves, such as conversations, letters, the stage, motions pictures, the radio, the lecture platform, the magazine, the daily newspaper. The Council on Public Relations is not an advertising man, but he advocates the advertising where it is indicated. Very often he is called in by an advertising agency to supplement its work on behalf of a client. His work and that of the advertising agencies do not conflict with or duplicate each other. His first efforts are naturally devoted to analyzing his client's problems and making sure what he has to offer the public is something in which the public accepts or can be brought to accept. It is futile to attempt to sell an idea or to prepare for the ground for a product that is basically unsound. For an example, the orphan asylum is worried by a fall off in contributions and a puzzling attitude of indifference or hostility in the part of the public. The Council on Public Relations may discover upon analysis that the public, alive to modern sociological trends, subconsciously criticizes the institution because it is not organized on the new cottage plan. He will advise modification of the client on this respect, or a railroad may be urged to put in the fast train for the sake of the prestige, which it will lend to the road's name and hence its stocks and bonds. If the corset makers, for instance, wish to bring their product into fashion again, he would unquestionably advise that the plan was impossible, right? Since women have definitely emancipated themselves from the old-style corsets. Yet its fashion advisors might report to him that women might be persuaded to adopt a certain type of girdle, which eliminated the unhealthful features of the corset. His next effort is to analyze his public. He studies the groups which must be reached and the leaders through whom he must approach these groups: social groups, economic groups, geographical groups, age groups, doctrinal groups, language groups, cultural groups. All these represent the divisions through which, on behalf of his client, he may talk to the public. Only after this double analysis has been made and the results collated has the time come for the next step, the formation of policies governing the general practice, procedures, and habits of the client, and all those aspects in which he comes in contact with the public. And only when these policies have been agreed upon is it time for the fourth step. The first recognition of the distinct functions of the Public Relations Council arose perhaps in the early years of the present century as a result of those insurance scandals, coincidence with the muckraking of the corporate financing where popular magazines, the interests thus attacked suddenly realized that were completely out of touch with the public. They were professing to serve and required expert advice to show them how they could understand the public and interpret themselves to it. The Life Insurance Council, prompted by the most fundamental self-interest, initiated a conscious, directed effort to change the attitude of the public toward insurance companies in general and toward itself in particular to its profit and the public's benefit. It tried to make a majority movement of itself by getting the public to buy its policies. It reached the public at every point of its corporate and separate existences. The communities it gave health surveys and expert councils, and individuals it gave health creeds and advice. Even the building in which the corporation was located was made in a picturesque landmark to see and remember. In other words, to carry on the associative process. And so this company came to have a broad general acceptance. The number and amount of its policies grew constantly, and its broad contracts with society increased. Within a decade, many large corporations were employing public relations counsels under one title or another, for they had come to recognize that they were dependent upon the public goodwill for their continued prosperity. It was no longer true that it was none of the public's business how the affairs of a corporation were managed. They were obliged to convince the public that they were conforming to its demands. As to the honesty and fairness, thus a corporation might discover that its labor policy was causing public resentment, and might introduce a more enlightened policy solely for the sake of general goodwill, or a department store hunting for the cause of diminishing sales might discover that its clerks had a reputation for bad manners and initiate formal instruction, courtesy, and tact. The public relations expert may be known as a public relations director or counsel, often as he is called secretary or vice president or director. Sometimes he is known as a cabinet officer or commissioner. By whatever title he may be called, his function is well defined and his advice has definite bearing on the conduct of the group or individual with whom he is working. Many persons still believe that the public relations counsel is a propagandist and nothing else. But to the contrary, the stage at which many suppose he starts his activities may actually be the stage at which he ends them. After the public and the client are thoroughly analyzed and the policies have been formulated, his work may be finished. In other cases, the work of the public relations counsel must be continuous and to be effective. For in many instances, only by careful system of constant and thorough frank information will the public understand and appreciate the value of what a merchant, educator, or statesman is doing. The Council on Public Relations must maintain constant vigilance because inadequate information or false information from unknown sources may have results of enormous importance. A single false rumor at a critical moment may drive down the price of a corporation's stocks, causing a loss of millions of stockholders. An air of secrecy or mystery about a corporation's financial dealings may breed a general suspicion capable of acting as an invisible drag on a company's whole dealings with the public. The Council on Public Relations must be in a position to deal effectively with the rumors and suspicions, attempting to stop them at their source, counteracting them properly with correct or more complete information through channels which will be most effective, or best of all, establishing such relations of confidence in the concern's integrity that rumors and suspicions have no opportunity to take root. His function may include the discovery of new markets, the existence of which had been unsuspected. Right? If we accept public relations as a profession, we must also expect it to have both ideals and ethics. The ideal of a profession is a pragmatic one. It is to make the producer, whether the producer is a legislature making laws or a manufacturer making a commercial product, understand that what the public wants and to make the public understand the objectives of the producer. In relation to industry, the ideal of the profession is to eliminate the waste and friction that result when industry does things or makes things which the public does not want, or when the public does not. Hang on, wait a minute. I lost my place for a second. Yeah. What the public understand what the public wants and to make the public understand the objective of the producer. In relation to the ideal profession is to eliminate the waste and friction does not want, or when the public does not understand what is being offered it. For example, the telephone companies maintain extensive public relation departments to explain what they are doing so that the energy may not be burned up in the friction of misunderstanding. A detailed description, for example, of the immense and scientific care which a company takes to choose clearly and understandably distinguishable exchange names helps the public to appreciate the efforts that is being made to give good service, and it stimulates it to cooperate by enunciating clearly. It aims to bring about an understanding between educators and educated, between government and people, between charitable institutions and contributors, between nation and nation. The profession of public relations counsel is developing for itself an ethical code which companies favorably with what the governing and legal and medical professionals impart. This code is enforced upon the public relations counsel by the very conditions of his work, while recognizing, just as the lawyer does, that everyone has the right to present his case in the best light. He nevertheless refuses a client whom he believes to be dishonest, a product which he believes to be fraudulent, or a cause which he believes to be antisocial. One reason for this is that even though a special pleader, he is not dissociated from the client in the public's mind. Another reason is that while he is pleading before the court of public opinion, he is at the same time trying to affect the country's judgments and actions. In law, the judge and jury hold the deciding balance of the power in public opinion. The Public Relations Counsel is the judge and jury because through his pleading of his case with public may accede to his opinion and judgment. He does not accept a client whose interests conflict with those of another client. He does not accept a client whose case he believes to be hopeless or whose product he believes to be unmarketable. He should be candid in his dealings. It must be repeated that his business is not to fool or hoodwink the public. If he were to get such a reputation, his usefulness in his profession will be at an end. When he is sending out propaganda material, it's clearly labeled as to the source. The editor knows from who it comes and what purposes, and accepts or rejects it on its merit as news. So, with that being said, I want y'all to understand who these people are who are forming the opinions that are being put onto the news and therefore being put onto you, right? It's important to understand all these things, right? And we're going to get into the psychology of public relations in the next section. I know we're working on 2 books right now. I apologize. Yo, look, I'm trying to, I got a lot of irons in the fire right now. We'll cover another chapter of Machiavelli tomorrow, and we'll probably cover another chapter of this tomorrow, and we'll do another regular video tomorrow. Look, I'm the hardest working motherfucker on YouTube. It is what it is. But anyway, man, yo, look, I'm Tom Peace of Pnoid News. Y'all know the situation. I'm going to get back to drinking my beer, and I'm probably going to pass the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, yo, look, like, share, and subscribe. This is a Pro 2 channel. You know the deal. Peace be like one. Later.